Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Centre. This is Phoenix FM.
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
According to the Nerd Index, you should be upside down in a junior high toilet around the clock.
This is Sparta!
All your days are belong to us.
It's a trap 9000!
Leave Benny alone!
Leroy Dragon!
The balls are inert.
And now it begins.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Nerd to Know Basis here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. You're joining us on Saturday at 5 p.m. My name is Darragh O'Connor, and I'm joined by, introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, I'm Cian O'Callaghan. I run a company called Underdog Theatre Productions. I work in theatre, and this is my second time on the show.
Yeah, so I figured after last week I wanted to give you a better introduction. So welcome to the show, man. It's great again. Really enjoyed the show last week. Obviously, I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the show. So thanks so much for picking it up. And look forward to seeing all the stuff we have lined up. So there's a lot because, you know.
No worries. Thrilled to be back.
And yeah, it's crazy. Like this week was a slow week compared to E3 and stuff, but still, you know, fast and quick. The news kind of came out. So our news coverage is going to be in the second part of the show because I have a lot to talk about at the opening here. So like the first thing, I'm away for work at the moment, for anyone who doesn't know, and I have nothing else really to do when I finish work except for watch Netflix. So I finally got around to watching Sabrina season 2, and that's the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. We talked before we went on air, Cian, that you haven't got a chance to see any of this yet, so your familiarity is probably like a lot.
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, go for it.
No, I was like a lot of people. I grew up with Sabrina on the Nickelodeon channel, you know, with the talking cat and kind of all that sort of light, fun ventures, Harvey Kinkle, all that kind of stuff. I've heard that this Netflix version is a huge departure from that. Am I correct? Yeah, well, see, how I came across this initially was, I remember a few years ago, you know, on comic sites, it was all the news that Sabrina married Cthulhu, right? And I was like, what? That sounds crazy. And then it turns out that Archie Comics, they went and did a hard left a couple of years ago, and they set up a really, really dark part of that universe. Because if anyone doesn't know, Sabrina is a comic book character for Archie Comics, you know, like the famous Archie Comics and Riverdale and all that kind of stuff. And Riverdale and Sabrina are all part of the same TV, Netflix universe kind of thing, right? But in the comics, obviously that was done first. And a couple of years ago, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina came out in comic book form. I think it was 2014. And I remember I was up in Big Bang and the guys were like, hey, you need to read this. So I was like, right. I picked it up a couple of years after that. Really got into it, really, really enjoyed it. Couldn't believe how dark it was. And then when I saw the TV show, the Netflix show, it's darker again. Like it's a couple of my friends, a lot of my friends like it, but one of my friends, I was talking to her today about it. I'm like, hey, you need to watch the second season. She goes, I can't. The first season, you know, had a series of nightmares, and it freaked me out too much. I had to stop. Now, you know, I don't, you know, this might lose some street cred here, but I actually had nightmares last night, legit, from the second season, and it wasn't even anything scary. It's just so eerie and disturbing that it does kind of mess with you a bit. And yeah, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I was just like, what's going on? This is terrifying. So yeah, don't watch Sabrina. Wow. So is this like a horror show then, or is it something a bit more like supernatural? Like, what's the kind of tone of the show then for someone who might want to check it out?
Well, they're Satanists. Like unabashed, like Satanists, you know, like the devil is a character in it, and they worship the devil, and there's like pentagrams everywhere, and you know, a desecrated church is literally
a set piece, you know. So it's very, very, very full on. It's demons and stuff, but the tone of it, it's kind of light and playful as well. So it kind of feels like you're watching Buffy sometimes, but like with good production and modern special effects. But then it has this really weird undertone to it as well, where it's just like, oh, something just is not right here, you know, it's just off a bit. So it's an uncomfortable tone, but like a comfortably harsh tone is what I would describe it as. So if you have any interest in any kind of supernatural shows or anything like that, you'll love it. And even if you're not, if you're a fan of the Sabrina show from the 90s, what they've started to do now in the second season, they've actually started to make little references to it, which is, I think, is super fun. Apparently in the first season, they were supposed to be in the Nightmare series, in the Nightmare episode, spoilers from season 1. It's all like alternative universe kind of stuff. It's like, what happened if, right? And apparently one of them was supposed to be, they were supposed to be in the kitchen from the sitcom, but it didn't happen. And that would have been super fun. I think they were kind of afraid to do that in the first season, but now they've been renewed for 4 seasons. So the second season, there is a bit where she's changing her clothes, but it's done the same way that Sabrina did, where she like would twirl around and she just changed her outfits. And I'm like,
there's like a magical sparkle oval thing, yeah, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, but there were, without the sparkle, but they still kind of like are making little references here and there to it. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. But what I would say, you know, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's worth a shot. First season's excellent. Second season's fantastic. Do not watch the Christmas special. That's terrible. It's really bad. But yeah, there's something there for everybody, I would say. And I'm enjoying it. You know, it's actually, I didn't think it would affect me as much as it is, because like I haven't got nightmares in a while, and last night I actually got very spooked out. So yeah, don't watch it in the dark, but you know, maybe do, because it's fun. And I would say there's a lot of great things to watch on TV at the moment, like Chernobyl. I haven't got a chance to watch yet. I do want to watch it. That's scary for all different reasons, but if you have a Netflix account, definitely watch it.
Well, can I ask, before we kind of get away from Sabrina, you mentioned nightmares. Without getting into too much spoilers, what is it about the show that people are finding so terrifying?
Terrifying is the wrong word, because it's not terrifying. It's just very unsettling. And that's actually what my friend says. She goes, I was very unsettled by it. It's just it's because there's bits that are just graphically violent, you know, but not in like a Saw way. I mean, like, okay, see, I don't want to get into spoilers because it's really hard. Yeah, basically, like, there are bits where in a normal show it would cut away or they wouldn't go for it, but then they go for it and you're like, oh wow, that just happened. But then again, this is the same universe where Sabrina marries Cthulhu, so you know, like, there's black masses in this, there's outright occult references, there's a massive statue of Baphomet. You're like, you know, there's no middle ground here, you know. But what I will say, it's like, what's interesting, read the comics. Comics are great. The only problem is they weren't finished, right? So here's where it gets interesting, and here's why you should watch the show. Because people are like, hey, I read the comics, I don't need to read the show, or I can just watch the comics and not bother watching the show. Wrong, because what happened was the comics were cancelled when the show was picked up, and the only reason why is because all the writers of the comics went and are writing the show. So the show will wrap up the comics.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's not a Game of Thrones.
So it's carrying on that story.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're reading the comics, it's very like the show. When you're watching the show, it's like the comics for a reason. Also, you know, it's I know, and don't want to get too much into it, but you kind of have to give them some credit as well, because it's quite a progressive show as far as like it talks about stuff which I've actually never seen being talked about on TV as such, in like not a shove down your face kind of way. Just they're characters, but they happen to be X, Y, and Z. And I think that's a very, very kind of interesting way to do it. It's like the representation in Mortal Kombat where, you know, LGBT characters or characters who are slightly different as such, it's kind of like exposed in a new and unique way. And that's pretty interesting. It's, you know, it doesn't get enough shout because, you know, for all different reasons, but fair play. So and that's what I mean. There is something there for everybody. If you're a classic horror fan, you're going to like it. If you're someone who likes shows like that, you're going to like it. If you're someone who likes Riverdale, you're really going to like it because it's actually better than Riverdale. And if you're just a TV geek as well, you're gonna really enjoy it. And also, if you're a fan of Sabrina, like my sister was a big fan of Sabrina as well. Obviously, we all were, right? But she watched, she loved it. And she isn't a big horror fan anyway. But there's a lot of really good things going about the show, and I'm glad to see season 2 hasn't dipped in quality, because the Christmas episode was very poor, very poor.
And would it have the same kind of goofy charm like the old Sabrina had? Like at one point, the cat Salem was running the mafia and like all these very strange things. It wouldn't have that kind of goofy sensibility, would it?
It does, but in different ways, right? So Salem is just a cat, but you really like Salem because he's Salem. But they replace it with the aunt. Like the aunt works in a goofy comic book shop. Like Aunt Hilda. And it's just really good. Like the characters feel more like fleshed out characters with a really dark edge to it. It feels more like Buffy's probably the best way to put it. It feels like Buffy, but more kind of edgy than Buffy. It's like someone who they know their world. The sets are great as well. There's a lovely kind of like. Here's the weird thing, right? I don't know what era is set in. It's like Riverdale, because Riverdale's kind of like, it's supposed to be modern day, but then it has this 1950s aesthetic to it. It's kind of the same thing. It's like retro modern times, and that's kind of the same as Sabrina. Like you can't really say it's set in modern day, but it is, but it's not. So it's very much its own thing, and when you watch it, there's nothing else like it on TV. So I love the show. I think it's fantastic. The girl who's in it, actually, the girl who plays Sabrina, there's a very high possibility she's going to play Gwen Stacy soon in Spider-Man. So that's cool.
Oh, okay. I thought we've seen a lot of Gwen Stacy in the past few years. You mean the third Spider-Man movie, or like?
Well, the third Spider-Man movie was probably going to have a lot of things in it. So Deadpool and stuff like that apparently is going to be in it. But she's now been tapped to play Gwen Stacy. So maybe not in Spider-Man 3, but maybe in 5 or 6, or just exist in the same universe, because like really she looks exactly like her. Yeah. She really does. Like it's actually kind of scary. Speaking of which as well, man, have you got a chance to see Black Mirror? The new season?
I've only seen the first episode now. I know you mentioned Street Fighters earlier, but I'm enjoying what I've seen so far. Have you seen the whole new series?
I saw, well, there's only 3 episodes, so it wasn't too long of a watch. I was kind of disappointed in that, but I saw the first one. I really liked the first one. Kind of, sort of. Like, it was a good idea, but kind of weird tin a little bit as well. The memes are quite good, actually, after it. It was particularly the Captain America memes. But I liked the third one. Yes. I didn't like the second one. I got really... Same way with Metalhead, I wasn't a big fan of Metalhead. There's always that one episode in every season that I just kind of skip because it does something for me.
Just to clarify, Metalhead was the one in black and white with the robot dog, was it?
It was, yeah, correct.
That one actually kind of grew on me a lot just because of how visceral and uncomplicated it was. Black Mirror episodes are great, but they tend to sort of go down a lot of rabbit holes. I just liked how it reminded me of like an 80s film. It was just a survival thing.
That's it, and I probably will go back to it, and that's the same way I felt with the second one as well. It's like the same with not hate the nation, but the other one where it's with the army and they're trained to see people in a certain way, like zombies or whatever. That one
Men Under Fire, was that?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one. I did the same thing. There's always that one episode that I skip and kind of come back to because I don't feel like it fits in the Black Mirror kind of universe, because it's so uncomplicated. But I enjoy it. It's kind of like watching Bandersnatch. Like, I wouldn't watch Bandersnatch in a Black Mirror run. I'd watch Bandersnatch by itself. But yeah, it's one of those kind of things where I will go back to it. Love the third one though. I thought the third one was quite cool. It was the best episode of Hannah Montana I've ever seen. So
yeah. Well, you've hit on a good point there. There's a lot of star talent in this season. You've got 2 Marvel regulars in Anthony Mackie and is it Clementine? In the first episode, Striking Vipers, you have Andrew Scott, who's Moriarty from Sherlock in the second, and you have, of all people, Miley Cyrus in the third episode. Do you know the name of those latter 2 episodes off the top of your head?
I don't know the second one, but it's something and Ashley. I can't remember the second, but I don't know.
And how would you pitch these stories to the listeners?
The second one I haven't seen, so you're going to have to take the run on that. But the third one pretty much is literally the darkest episode of Hannah Montana you've ever seen. So it's about this girl who is playing a character, and she's pretty much drugged up and programmed to be this character. And then she decides that she doesn't want to do it anymore, so she's chemically drugged she's drugged into a chemical coma, and they extract songs out from her, only for her robot toy, which is actually a fully sentient AI, to be hacked, becoming a fully sentient AI, and they go on a crazy adventure to unfold the truth, and then it ends with them being a rock band. So I can see why some people
got me intrigued. Just to clarify, the episodes are called Striking Vipers, Smithereens, and the final one is Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too.
That's it. Yeah. So I would say, look, I've seen a lot of negativity towards this season. I totally understand why. I totally get why. It wasn't the content that kind of threw me this season. It was using big actors, if that makes sense. Like, the great thing about Black Mirror is it's kind of hard to place anyone because they're all unknowns. I think the best Black Mirror episodes are always the ones that feel real to a point. Although I do really like the Star Trek one, the USS Callister. I thought that was great. That was really, really fun. And even still, that had some big name actors in it as well. And I think there is that balance where, because there's money and they have a budget and they're actually able to get these actors in and, expand the story, it's going to have this negative backlash to it. And look, I thought the first episode was great. It was an interesting story. I've never really seen a story like that before. It told that way, obviously, there's, it's been done 100 times, but this is uniquely in its own way. It's like a pastiche of different things from the past couple of years, mishmashed into one very unexpected package. Second one I haven't seen, so sorry guys. Third one, as I said, like, it's when you hear that Miley Cyrus is in it, you're like, oh, this is gonna suck, and then you watch it and you're like, actually, this is very good. It's very good. It plays on the sister dynamic, the team of Lost, but then also you have like loads of Easter eggs, and there's some good videos on YouTube where you can watch these Easter egg rundowns, right? So all of them link into the Black Mirror universe through the little Easter eggs throughout. And so I would say all...
Yes, I did notice in the Choose Your Way Bandersnatch, there was lots and lots of Easter eggs because all the other games in that gaming company were named after different episodes and all that kind of stuff. It's not like a Marvel thing where they're all in the same universe, but if you pay attention, there's tiny little hints and connections and that kind of stuff.
For example, right, in the Hannah Montana episode, that's just what I'm going to call it, guys. But there's loads of video clips, right? And if you actually watch the video clips and the news clip footage of it, you can actually see loads of references to even the first episode, not the national anthem. So it's just like, wow, it's not over. It still keeps going and going and going. So that's just fantastic. And I think it's,
Yeah, I've got to say, I really like Black Mirror. I know that every time a series comes out, people say these two were good, these four weren't. But it never plays it safe. It always takes a chance in some very ludicrous, very dark direction. And you never get the impression that Charlie Brooker or any of his team are just winging it. You always get the sense that they're trying to create the new Million Merits, which I think is probably my favorite of all.
Oh, really?
Like the 10 Million Merits, the first series. Yeah, it's just I haven't seen an episode of television that was that brave to be almost entirely without dialogue. Like, I think the closest I can think of to anything that comes close to it is Inside Number 9, which is also on Netflix by the League of Gentlemen people. I honestly think it's a fantastic show, and I'm always pleasantly surprised on the new series. Like, you watch it too, yeah?
Oh, I love it. I actually, I actually kind of prefer that to Black Mirror. I think it takes way more risks, It's way more messed up as well. But yeah, man, I've never met somebody that actually has watched Inside Number 9, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got to say, every time I've met one or two people who've watched Inside Number 9, and they're always surprised that someone else has heard of it. It's not a very popular show.
And it should be, because the only bit is it's really hard to find. Like, you actually have to go out of your way to find the rest of it. There's like 4 or 5 seasons of it, and it's hard to find those 4 or 5 seasons. You get the first 2, but my actual favorite episode of Inside Number 9 is where they recreate Macbeth. And it's amazing. But the Simpsons kind of robbed that idea in the same way, but I think they did it first. So that's my favorite episode. Or the one where they tried to steal the art, and there's no dialogue.
You read my mind. Yeah, that's the one I always show people. For anyone who hasn't watched it at home, it's a bit like The Million Merits. It's an episode done entirely without dialogue about 2 robbers trying to break into a house and steal a bit of art, and it's kind of silent movie shenanigans from there. But like Black Mirror, it goes in very dark directions. But we won't say anything more than that. It's on Netflix, and it's definitely worth checking out.
And it has some really weird bits as well. Like, okay, well, Black Mirror is what it is. It's also kind of safe in its weirdness. Inside Number 9 just goes for it. They don't care at all. They're just like, yeah, this is weird. Watch how weird it's going to get. And then it does. And it's fantastic. If you're a Black Mirror fan, watch Inside Number 9. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. So there's some big reps. I want to kind of get into Chernobyl eventually when I watch it, because I haven't seen it yet. But apparently it's the show to watch, Kane. Have you had a chance to watch it yet?
Yeah. Where can I find it?
It's on HBO. That's the thing. So it's like, apparently it's better than Game of Thrones. That's what I've heard. I heard it's the show to watch, and so much so that Instagram models are going to Chernobyl, which is a weird sentence to say.
Huh. Yes, I have seen those articles coming out saying, shock, Chernobyl is based on real events, and there is a certain. Like, I hear the same thing when people allegedly think Titanic was just a movie. It's that slight disconnect from reality. I imagine it's exaggerated to some degree, but still, yeah, it's a bit disconcerting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, wow, it's kind of worrying, but then again, this is how myths are made, so if it wasn't for the fact that we have the internet and stuff like that, who knows what people would think was real and what wasn't, But speaking of something
exactly.
To wrap up this review section, so we call it, Godzilla 2, I finally saw it.
Oh, yes. Did it live up to your expectations?
Oh, man, I was crying. So good. So good. Like, such a brilliant movie that is horribly represented by the media. Look, I don't know what movie these critics are watching. Honest to God, I don't. It's a movie. Like, I went in with my only preconceived conception was it's going to be monsters and it's going to be fighting, and it delivers. It's amazing. Look, it's a kaiju movie. If you want to see some spectacular monster fights, go see it. If you want to sit down and watch Citizen Kane, watch Citizen Kane. I don't know what people are expecting. Like, are you familiar with the Godzilla franchise, the original Show Godzilla franchise in Japan?
I haven't seen the original Japanese ones, if that's what you mean.
Yes.
I've seen the 2014 one, and I've seen, unfortunately, the 90s one. But I only have a passing knowledge beyond that, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let me sell this for you, Kane, right? So, for anyone who doesn't know, the Godzilla franchise is huge in Japan, obviously. They make one Godzilla movie a year or one every 2 years, right? I haven't seen all of them. Wow. I've seen about 26 of them. And I haven't seen all of them. There's loads of Godzilla movies. My personal favorite one, and I know this one is kind of, it's kind of silly, but it's the one where Godzilla fights Zilla, which is the name that the Japanese have given the 1998 movie version of Godzilla.
Now I'm just on the outside of this, but I hear the 90s movie changed a lot of the Godzilla lore. They kind of just made him into a T-Rex, didn't they?
Yeah, and who can give birth to velociraptors. So that's why they call him Zilla. It's not really Godzilla. So what happens in in the Godzilla movie from Japan, I think it's made in 2000, they fight and he picks up Zilla, throws him through the Sydney Opera House, and then fries him with his nuclear blast. It's spectacular.
They've had a bit of an axe to grind then with the one, did they?
A little bit. But Toho, it was the first time they had given such a prestigious thing to America, and America are like, oh, lol, we're going to do what we want. And it went pretty bad. But look, I don't mind the Godzilla 1998 movie. It is what it is. It has all the cast of The Simpsons in it for some reason, or most of the cast of The Simpsons in it, which is very weird.
Didn't it? That was very peculiar.
Yeah, it has Lisa, and then pretty much everything that Hank Azaria does. So it's very strange altogether. But so if you haven't seen it, watch it, but try not to take it as a Godzilla movie. However, this one obviously picks up from 2014's Godzilla, then ties together Skull Island, and it really does kind of harp on the Skull Island thing. It really starts world building. And basically the premise is there's these monarch facilities which monitor kaiju appearances. So these are all the ancient beasts that wake up, and they're pretty much the old gods, and they set them up as the old gods of the ancient world. So, and there's some really cool bits in it where they actually go into like what's Atlantis, and it's supposed to be like this big pre-Islamic society where everything was rooted from. So it kind of looks like a bit like Greece, but then also a bit of Mesopotamia, a bit of Atlantis. They get into the Hollow Earth kind of thing, so that's how they're able to travel and hide. And look, it's mad, But it all builds up to this terrorist plot where the person who's supposed to be monitoring one of the great doctors supposed to be monitoring Godzilla actually is a bioterrorist who releases what they call Creature 1 or Creature 0, and that's like a space alien who fights Godzilla to be crowned king of the monsters, right? So that sets up the plot, and what follows on there is just some phenomenal fights. But not even the fighting itself, Kane. It's a beautiful movie to watch. Like a lot of the scenes, it kind of pans back and it looks like a painting. So there's 4 or 5 scenes. I'm actually going to buy the concept art of this movie, the concept art book, because I was just sitting there in the cinema going, holy cow, this movie looks...
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've seen some trailers and footage, and like just some of the things like the 3-headed monster coming out of the volcano near a cross and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like a very kind of visually well thought out movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, okay, the plot is kind of silly, as if you haven't got my rundown of it, but
by the description, yes.
But it doesn't pretend to be anything highbrow. And the thing about it is, if you've watched the Godzilla movies, the human element is always like the worst part of it. Like it's a means to an end. It's like, oh, we have to have humans in it. Here's some humans. Now back to the giant monsters fighting. It's kind of like the same way with Power Rangers. It's like the plot was never super deep. It was literally just to watch the fights and the cool music. But, if you're a fan of Godzilla movies, you're going to love this. If you're not, you're still going to love it. But the critics, I think, I don't know what movie they were watching. I don't know why they went so hard on it. But it's like, if you go see a Godzilla movie with Godzilla King of the Monsters, it is what it is. So I would say, look, go support it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think you'll have a great time with it. I think anybody will have a great time with it. Go in, turn your brain off, get some popcorn, and enjoy the spectacle.
Excellent. And I heard that you mentioned the eco-terrorist. Is Charles Dance from Game of Thrones the villain? Is that correct?
He's set up as the villain, but it actually turns out that your one from The Conjuring is the villain.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, and she's in loads of the... I'm a big fan of Source Code. Have you ever seen Source Code?
Yeah, of course. Was that the Jake Gyllenhaal film?
It was, and she's in it. It turns, and a big part of this movie, she's talking into a screen. So I'm like, okay, so she's typecast now as either a banisher of demons or somebody who talks into a monitor. It's pretty funny.
Whoa. Very, very niche casting, yeah.
But it works. She gets around. Any movie that I watch now, I'm just like, she just pops up. I'm like, oh, there you are. Hello. Okay. But with that said, we're going to take our first break, Keen, and we get back. We have to talk about Star Trek and all the madness that's coming up. Guys, so we'll be back after this short break here on Phoenix 92.5 FM.
Okay, so you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering, well, what if I want to listen live and I'm not in Ireland? Well, don't worry. Go over to www.nerdtoknowmedia.com. On the webpage at the bottom, there is a link to the Phoenix FM stream. Check out the details of the show you want to listen to and you'll be able to catch us live. Don't forget to tweet in nerd2, the number 2, no 92.5, or of course you can contact us via the contact tab on the website over on nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Centre. This is Phoenix FM.
Okay, guys, we're back here on Phoenix 92.5 FM, nerd to know basis. Keen, a lot to get through again. We kind of did our big reviews section. So where do you want to start?
Well, I suppose we didn't get a chance to cover it last week with E3 and all that, but it seems like we're getting a new Star Trek show by the end of the year, or several. There seems to be a lot of buzz around that franchise at the moment.
Oh my god. So we talked about last week, or I found out that you're a fan of the Midnight's Edge show on YouTube. So, full disclosure, I'm a Star Wars fan. Not a huge Star Trek aficionado. Like, I'm aware of it, I've watched it, but I wouldn't be super deep in the lore of it. But what's really piqued my interest now is the background of this. So the Star Trek Discovery hasn't been great from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong. The show kind of has underperformed and upset a lot of people. What's going on with it?
I would agree it's underperformed. Personally, I've really enjoyed Discovery. I think it's a huge departure from the 80s and 90s Trek.
Right.
But it's, to be honest, tonally, it's closer to the remake of Battlestar Galactica. But I've really, really enjoyed it, and it's built up a nice following across its 2 seasons.
See, I love the remake of Battlestar Galactica, but I was led to believe that.
You've seen that, yeah?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I've well, not of course. Loads of people didn't see it. That's why it ended. But no, I love the remake of Battlestar Galactica. But yeah, no. From what I've heard about it, I heard people were really upset with it.
Well, I won't go into spoilers, but the first season is basically set in the Klingon War. So the characters are doing things that aren't very typically Federation, Star Trek, that kind of stuff. And I understand that, and the kind of design of the Klingons rub people up the wrong way. Right. Series 2 kind of course corrects into more familiar territory. They're kind of back to more episodic stuff. They have some familiar characters like Spock and that kind of stuff. But I've really enjoyed Discovery personally. I think it's a fantastic show, and the production values and the cast. I think it's amazing. I really hope it comes back as soon as possible.
Is it in the Kelvin timeline or what?
No, it's in the original timeline. In fact, Series 2 does a lot.
I see. Okay.
Set up that original series because Kirk's mentor, Captain Pike, is there as the captain. Spock is there from before, and it does a lot of it's a good prequel. It does a lot of the groundwork to set up familiar elements from the very original show with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and all that. Oh,
neat. Okay, cool. See, this is what I mean. Like, I have a passing exposure to it, but if you were to start delving deeper, I wouldn't really follow. And that kind of ties into what I'm gonna bring up next. So Picard is a thing, and this is going to be on Amazon Prime, right? So, from my understanding, does this pick up after the Next Generation, or is this set in a new timeline? So, do you know what's going on there?
It certainly seems to be picking up from a Next Generation. They have only released a 1-minute trailer, but the 1-minute trailer is him on his vineyard, which relates to the very last episode of Next Generation, where we saw Picard 30 years in the future from where they were now in 1994 or whatever. And this show is coming out at the exact time in his life that flash forward would have been happening. So it seems to be picking up right from where the Next Generation ended, with the exception of the movies, which carried that on a bit further.
Wow. Okay. So, a lot of setup there. It's kind of like when Twin Peaks came back, and it just happened at the exact same time when
That's a really good comparison. Yeah, it's kind of chronologically just fits in where the last one left off, in theory at least.
Well, that's you can't be upset with that, guys. Come on, like that's pretty cool. I'm not even a fan, and I think that's pretty cool. Foreshadowing by accident. But what's interesting here as well, man, right? So not only do we have those two shows coming up, but there's a Tarantino movie apparently coming out. Basically.
Yeah, I'm slightly dubious of that because it feels like they've been kicking around Star Trek this is the one with the Zachary Quinto, the kind of rebooted timeline and all that. They've been kicking around that for a while. For a while, it looked like Chris Hemsworth was going to come back as Kirk's dad, and there's going to be time travel. That seems to have been gone. So I'm going to be relatively dubious of it until I see a trailer or something more promising. Like,
yeah, I just don't really see that happening. I think that was just something for for headlines. And it was a very good headline to have. It's because apparently Tarantino has two movies left, one based in 1960s Hollywood and another one. So, it's really up in the air. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, I'll probably watch it because that's kind of weird, and I always kind of like see directors kind of take up new things just to kind of run with it. Because look here, case in point, the writer-director of Chernobyl, he's most famous for doing the bad, scary movies, doing superhero movie, and all this kind of stuff. So, when guys take a risk, it works out sometimes, and then sometimes it doesn't. So it is what it is. But
well, you never know. Sometimes it's just the hands they're dealt. Sometimes there's a director attached, but there's a lot of producer oversight. Unfortunately, unless you make the effort to dig deep, you don't really know. I mean, like, for example, do you see Shazam?
Yes.
That came out. Like, the director of that has a background in horror, but like one of his horrors, Annabelle Creation, was very studio mandated, so it doesn't feel like his other stuff. Unfortunately, unless you're a big name, sometimes your creative track record isn't exactly something you've had creative control over. So it's good to sort of see people, like, I mean, for example, you talked about Benioff and Weiss from Game of Thrones. I believe one of them wrote X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, obviously would have had a lot of control over, but Game of Thrones, maybe less so. So we have to take these things with a pinch of salt each time we come across something.
But what's interesting about Shazam was, you could still see the horror. Like, there's a bit in Shazam where what are they called? The sins.
Oh, the demons, the seven deadly sins. Yeah.
They go into the boardroom, and that's proper horror. It really is kind of like a scary part in the movie. So you can still kind of see it there, but with Benioff and Weiss, it's like as soon as they ran out of source material, they're like, all right, lads, let's run to more source material. So it is what it is. But I haven't obviously had a chance to play any games because I'm away, but I've heard some pretty cool stuff about Vampire the Masquerade. Have you ever played Vampire the Masquerade?
No, I believe you mentioned it last week. This is the game you're talking about with, like, the graphics were low, but it was an amazing game. Like,
yeah, I'm going to keep mentioning it because that's what I'm playing at the moment. But one of the cool things we got is we got a release date for Vampire the Masquerade, March 2020. Oh yeah. Is when that's coming out. So, that wasn't confirmed in E3, but it did break after it. I think so. Was a Cyberpunk 2020, the Cyberpunk game that kind of took a lot of its steam away. But we got a bigger breakdown of what's coming. So more classes, more graphics, and more things to do. And also now there's a lot of different support been added, and an online section as well, which is going to be kind of weird because I'm so used to playing that game by myself that to have it in a real world environment is going to be a bit weird too. So I don't know, man. I would say Vampire the Masquerade is fine the way it is, but I'm excited to see what this new one is going to throw at us. So we have to see.
Well, it seems like most games that come out these days do have some sort of online component. Is that just a business thing, or is it because the internet's more easy to access? Like, what do you think is the thinking behind putting this component in all the games?
Well, I suppose it is an easy way to kind of get some replayability. Like, for example, with Grand Theft Auto 4, I loved it for the mods, but a lot of people loved it because it was online. And the same with Grand Theft Auto 5. I think that game made nearly doubled its money because of its online missions. Yeah, and that is pretty much the long and short of it. It's if they do it right, they can have a really, really good experience. If they do it wrong, well, they made some money. The balance is kind of to not put resources solely to it. For example, the first Star Wars Battlefront game that came out.
You read my mind. You said you were a Star Wars head. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on those later two Battlefront games.
But the first one, I loved the graphics of it, but it was not great. I still play the second one from 2005. I love that game, so I play that pretty much consistently. But
the one that came out around the time of Revenge of the Sith, yeah?
Yes. And actually, I have a modded version of it where they've built in stuff from KOTOR and that, so you can play as the Knights of the Republic characters, and I'm like, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's a very fun game. But what I will say is the second one that came out, so the one that came out around the same time as The Last Jedi, is actually very good. Now it's very good. Now, like we're talking 2019, it's very good because they've actually patched in a lot of things. So you can now play as Obi-Wan, you can play as Anakin, you can do the missions on Geonosis. So the game that we have now is actually like a high-res skinned version of the Battlefront from 2005.
Okay.
So the online component can work. And look, to be honest with you, the story mode was garbage in the new game. I did not like it at all. That was very, very lame. But the online component is a fun experience, when it's done well. And I think having it all, like story, I prefer games with story modes, right? Always. But in this,
yeah,
it's just that's the way I see games are, But in this experience, you come home from work or late or whatever, and you just want to play a Star Wars campaign. For my money, I don't think there's a better experience you can have. Because it feels like you're actually in Star Wars. Yeah, it's weird. It's like.
I'm glad you said that because I did a bit of backseat gaming watching the newer Battlefront 2 last week with my brother, and it seems like a very engaging game. The multiplayer seems good. I saw Lando Calrissian and Princess Leia in there, but at the same time, when it came out, I heard there was quite a lot of outrage. What was the story with that then?
Yeah, it was greed, man. It was just greed because originally you'd have to. There's a loot box system was in play, and it's still kind of there now with the cards, with the star cards, but it's been nerfed, and now it doesn't really matter. But basically when it came out, you'd have to play the equivalent of like 150 hours to unlock Luke Skywalker.
Oh my goodness.
And that's just grinding, or else pay money, not just to here. Okay, I don't have a problem with DLC to buy characters, right? Personally, I'm like, okay, whatever, if I get to buy the character. But this took the piss. You'd have to pay money to gamble with the possibility of getting these characters. That was the problem.
Oh, I see.
So it was like buying.
See, I wouldn't mind that in like a free Facebook game or something. Like I used to get that a lot with the Avengers game on Facebook. But when you've paid 60 quid for it, that seems a bit cheeky.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind DLC where you pay €35 or €25 or whatever to buy the season pass, and then you get the character. Like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But to do that, it's like, well, I can't even buy the characters I want because I think that's a bit much, and that's kind of what broke the dam. Well, the first one, there wasn't enough content, so it was just EA being greedy, or EA just being EA again, and that was kind of the problem. So but now they fixed it, and it's a very decent experience.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up EA. Now, I'm not really privy to the backgrounds of all these companies and all that kind of stuff, but I did see a video that had like 5 years under EA, 5 years under the original company, I think, LucasArts, that did them. And in this 5 years' time, there was like 16 Star Wars games, there was Lego games, there was Bounty Hunter games, there was Empire at War, which I still play to this day.
Same.
Then under EA, they've done 2.
Yeah.
And 2 that were at best controversial, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's it. And that's why there was talk that they were going to like leave them, you know? But what I think now, well, obviously we're getting a new Star Wars game with Jedi Fallen Order. I think they're finally been like, right, here's what makes money. And it's also because the whole Star Wars franchise since Disney got it has been very mismanaged anyway. A lot of growing pains, but I think the next 5 years.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I would have thought something as powerful as Disney would like be like, where are our games? We signed a deal with you. We want something every 6 months. Yeah.
But I thought that too, but I don't think Disney understands what it's going to do with Star Wars yet. And now they're starting to, and I think once Old Republic comes out, or Knights of the Republic comes out, the movie, that's when I think they'll start, or even Mandalorian comes out, they'll be like, oh, this makes money now. Go make the games. Or go make this and that. Right now, Force Awakens was a big hit, but it didn't really offer anything. It was like a fast food.
Yeah.
You know, you were satisfied at the moment, but then you felt sick on the way home. The Last Jedi, while I liked it personally, it upset a lot of people and just, you know.
Oh, I loved it, yeah.
I thought it was great. But a lot of people didn't, and it went over like a fart in church. So, you know, no one wanted to
Oh, yeah, my girlfriend hates the new Disney movies. She likes Rogue One and Solo, but she doesn't like the new ones that are overwriting that old canon, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'm the same. I agree with your girlfriend. She's spot on. She's a smart lady. You know, she really is there. That's the canon they replaced is, it's a crime against humanity. But Solo I liked, and Rogue One I liked as well. But then again, what are you going to kind of do there? You know, they could have made games, but by bringing out that new canon, they overwrote a lot of the canon that existed in the games.
Yeah.
You know, it's, as I said, look, give it another 5 years, then we'll start seeing real money making stuff. But right now it's kind of just a wait and see approach. And, you know, Disney Star Wars is depressing because they have the goose that laid the golden egg and they just don't know how to use it. They don't know how to extract the egg. But man, you know, we have come to...
Yeah, I give it, like, Star Wars Rebels is very good, but it seems like a Star Wars franchise is just screaming out to have things made in it, games, comics, books, all that kind of stuff. But there doesn't seem to be like a Kevin Feige figure with a plan. It does seem like every time they're kind of rolling the dice and seeing.
Well, see, there is,
you know, or like throwing something at the wall, like, you know.
There is. Dave Filoni's there, the guy who did Star Wars, Clone Wars, and I think he did Rebels as well. But he's not given the reins yet. He's still answering to the higher ups. So
yeah,
I think if the new Star Wars movie, and guys, there's a new Star Wars movie coming out at the end of this year, if you didn't know, because you wouldn't know because the marketing's been so muted about it. If that flops, I think then they'd be like, right, let's do something with this. But for the moment, they're still kind of like, well, it hasn't fully flopped yet.
Yeah, it hasn't fully flopped. I like that.
Yeah, so it's nearly there. You know,
it's only mostly dead.
It's only mostly dead. Yeah, it's like if this new movie epically fails, they're like, well, we better restart this. To be fair, look, and just go with me here. I think here's how the new Star Wars movie should open. Right, hard cut to Luke walking out of the shower. Right. And, and Mara Jade walks in and she's like, what are you doing here? And then she's like, oh, Mara Jade gets out of bed and she walks into the shower, into the bathroom, and she's like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? And she goes, I had this horrible dream. And then she just kind of explains the past 2 movies, and then it just walks out, and it's just.
So I was living on an island with porgs, and
exactly. It's the thing from Dallas. I think that's what they should do, and just acknowledge that it's ridiculous, and just continue on the expanded universe, and like Han is there, and like Lowbacca is there, and all that kind of stuff, and then just forget about it, and just never, just make movies based on the books, and then there you go. Because you have to do something, because my God.
Yeah, I'm very surprised. I was expecting, because Snoke was so secretive, that they were going to do some sort of like a bit. You mentioned the Kelvin timeline, where there's like technically 2 Star Trek movie universes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I assumed we'd get some sort of explanation where that future was going to happen, and it turned out Snoke prevented it, or just something that drew all these disparate elements together. But no, they kind of just sort of. I'm not sure what they expected people to react to, because they went out of their way to kind of bring up familiar elements and destroy familiar elements. I like The Last Jedi personally, but I don't know how they, for a studio that's known to play it very safe, I don't know what they were expecting people to react to in regards to the creative decisions they've made and all that kind of stuff. It seems like they may have expected anything with Star Wars to do well. Whereas with the Marvel things, every franchise, your Guardians, your Ant-Man, your Doctor Strange, really had to make its own case, and they could shut down any one of those that didn't cut the mustard. Like we only got one Incredible Hulk movie, for example.
Yeah, but that's more for licensing than anything else. Like Marvel still don't own the Hulk, but it's like, I think Disney don't understand. They fundamentally don't understand what they have. It's the same thing that Sony fell into with Spider-Man. Same thing that we've talked about last week. That Fox ended up with, but they keep making the same mistakes with the X-Men, and that they don't understand what Fantastic Four. It's like they fundamentally don't get what they have, and a safer bet would have been, to just try something new, and that's what they're kind of doing now with the Mandalorian. There's probably gonna be no Jedi in it, and it's gonna be off and being its own thing. And I think that's kind of a good step in the right direction. And then as I said, 5 years. If it doesn't work in 5 years, that's it. But it will. I think now they've invested enough money and they've made enough mistakes where they're like, right, we really need to start, turning this chicken, and to go into chicken salad, or else. That's $4 billion.
Yeah. It's funny we were talking about Godzilla earlier, because that was a case of this franchise being handed to someone, and they didn't really not make the effort, perhaps, to understand what it was and why people like it, and they just made it and kind of hoped the name would carry it. There seems to be, with Sony certainly, and the way they manage Spider-Man, and maybe The Mummy to some degree with that universe, like it does seem that like now studios are copping on to the fact that if you don't put in the work and do due diligence to the property you are adapting, people will reject it, or at the very least not see the appeal of it. Exactly. And I think maybe that extends to some of the DC properties as well.
Yeah, and I think it's the same mistake over and over again. If you're not going to try and meet the audience halfway, or really kind of express your love of what you're doing, then people are going to see it as hollow and just not go, and that's death to a franchise. It really is.
Exactly. Like, I mean, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man is quite like Shazam in that way, where it's you could tell the people making it clearly loved this lore and loved all these characters and loved all that kind of stuff, and even if you as a viewer didn't get it, you got the sense that they did, and they were enjoying what they're doing. And that does catch. Exactly. I genuinely believe it does.
Exactly. And look, the Sam Raimi movies, we might even do a little retrospective at some point, but the Sam Raimi movies are goofy and fun. But that's it. That's something that the new Star Wars movies don't have. They're not fun. They're just...
I think another issue could be that Star Wars is such a sacred thing in cinema now, that there's this need to pay it reverence and take it very seriously. If you go back and watch the Star Wars movies, they were kind of making it on the fly and just having fun doing it. I think, weirdly enough, Solo's the only Disney movie, to my money, that captures that sense of fun, silliness, and just kind of going with it and throwing in as much fun as you can while you're doing it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, even with the Marvel movies, they don't take themselves that seriously, but they know when.
No, they don't at all.
But they know when it needs to be done. But compared to watching, name it, any recent Star Wars movie, it's a tough watch. From that perspective, and I like The Last Jedi because it took risks, but compared to the old Star Wars movies, it's not up there. But Cian, man, we have run out of time. It's the fastest hour.
Have we already?
Fastest hour, yeah. I want to thank you again, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. It's been great fun as well.
Guys, and people listen to this because they're just saying that. It's like, no, seriously, it just feels like we just started this. But yeah, is there anything you'd like to plug, man, before we let you go?
Well, I suppose for anyone who's enjoying you mentioned the Sabrina the Teenage Witch show, there is a lovely book out at the moment called Perfectly Preventable Deaths. It's by an Irish author, Deirdre Sullivan. It's got a lot of really similar elements. If you enjoy the scary but also kind of light witchcraft things, I would say that'd be a lovely one to check out.
Oh, super fun. Guys, I will plug our Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Go to nerd2, the number 2, no on Twitter. The Facebook page is nerdtoknowmedia.com. And of course, if you want to go over to nerdtoknowmedia.com, you'll be able to find links to all the shows and everything else we're doing there. It's going to go under maintenance soon when I get home because we need to upgrade it. But yeah, it's still up there. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Twitch, all that kind of good stuff. So just search nerdtoknowmedia.com and you will be able to find all the information to check out the show each and every week. So until next week, guys, we'll see you then.
Thank you very much.